the world of European football has been, if not turned on its head, certainly the mill pond has had a very large anvil, cartoon style, thrown into it. Let's just give you the timeline. Tomorrow there was supposed to be an announcement from UEFA about their tweaking of the Champions League. Much of this under pressure from the big clubs led by Agnelli, the head honcho at Juventus. This was then leaked. The idea of this was overtaken by the several big clubs, about a dozen of them, including 6 from England. You can guess which 6. Coming up with an idea of a completely different European Super League, which would see them not sanctioned by relegation, no matter how badly they did. They would be perpetual members of the Super League. This set off a panicked reaction from the football authorities. I say the government's gone as well. Oliver Dowden, the Culture Secretary and Sport, is the last thing. He's Culture, Digital Culture, Media, Sport Minister. Absolutely pathetic statement from him. We've seen Gary Neville doing his pieces on Sky. Let me give you, Andy will give us the latest in a second. But on the back of the story that broke in the Times and the New York Times, UEFA, the English Football Association, the Premier League, the Spanish Football Federation, La Liga, the Italian Federation and Serie A put out this statement. It's quite short, but I'll read the whole thing. UEFA, the English Football Association, the Premier League, the Royal Spanish Football Federation, La Liga, Italian Football Federation, La Liga Serie A, have learned that a few English, Spanish and Italian clubs may be planning to announce their creation of a closed so-called Super League. If this were to happen, we wish to reiterate that we, UEFA, then the list of all those other leagues as well, and all our associate members will remain united in our effort to stop this cynical project, a project that is founded on the self-interest of a few clubs at a time when society needs solidarity more than ever. We will consider all measures available to us at all levels, both judicial and sporting, in order to prevent this happening. Football is based on open competitions and sporting merit. It cannot be any other way. As previously announced by FIFA and the 6 federations, the clubs concerned will be banned from playing in any competition at domestic, European or world level, and their players could be denied the opportunity to represent their national teams. We thank those clubs in other countries, especially the French and German clubs, who have refused to sign up to this. We call on all the lovers of football, supporters and politicians to join us in fighting against such a project if it were to be announced. This persistent self-interest of a few has been going on for too long. Enough is enough, says the English language version of the statement. That was about 3 hours ago, in preparation for what we thought, Andy, was going to be a 9:30 announcement of the new Super League, which of course has been in the air for many, many years. What's actually happened since?
We've had an announcement, but it's not quite that. It's from the ECA, European Club Association, whose strapline is Heart of Football, of course, led by Andrea Agnelli of Juventus, who's been very much at the forefront of this Super League movement. It's a short statement. I'll read it through. In light of today's reports on the subject of a so-called breakaway league, ECA, as the body representing 246 leading clubs across Europe, reiterates its stated commitment to working on developing the UEFA club competitions model with UEFA for the cycle beginning 2024, and that a closed Super League model to which media articles refer would be strongly opposed by ECA. It then goes on to say ECA would refer to the position adopted by its executive board at its meeting last Friday, 16th of April, namely that it supports a commitment to work with UEFA on a renewed structure for European club football as a whole post-2024, including proposed changes to the UEFA club competitions post-2024, of which most of the listenership are aware and we'll come back to in a minute. With ECA's support, UEFA's executive committee has been asked to endorse these commitments at its meeting on 19th of April, which is tomorrow, along with pursuing efforts to reach an agreement on the future relationship between ECA and UEFA. The ECA executive board will be convening over the coming days to take appropriate decisions in light of any further developments. Now, that to me suggests two things. One, that there's a split in ECA, because it says that they haven't really come to a definitive position on this is pretty clear. I think the other thing to note is it's not actually signed by Andrea Agnelli at the bottom, which I think is really important, because it would suggest that not only is he maybe not going to be involved with UEFA going forward because he's taken quite an aggressive stance against them, it appears, but he's drifting away from the ECA, and that all the clubs are not necessarily on the same page. Now, we know who the 12 clubs are, but we'll reiterate, just in case anyone's missed it. The 6 in the Premier League who we believe to be in agreement with this breakaway Super League idea. Liverpool, Manchester United, Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal, and I'm missing one, Manchester City, Atletico, Real Madrid and Barcelona, who, as we'll come on to, have very particular reasons for supporting this concept. And in Italy, Juventus, obviously, Andrea Agnelli, Inter and Milan. The absentees, the big absentees straight away are obviously Bayern and Paris Saint-Germain. Now, I suspect, Mark, that there's a little bit of wait and see here, but there's no absolutely definitive position from the world's biggest clubs.
No, I don't think you would expect there to be, because everyone's got their own self-interests involved. We know that Paris Saint-Germain, for instance, their owners also got ownership of the TV rights in certain countries at the moment as it stands for the Champions League. And I think it would make sense from the German point of view to not commit to this because it's gone down so badly. It doesn't mean necessarily that Bayern wouldn't join it if it ever come to fruition. It's just that maybe you're sensible enough to not put your name on it first of all.
Can I ask you a question, lads? I mean, we'll come on to, after the break, we'll come on to what it would look like, this thing, if it was ever to get off the ground. But my sense of it is that the extraordinary action in the public forums and on social media, and indeed, Boris Johnson's had his say on it this evening, the extraordinary reaction to it is not irrelevant, but it's interesting that I don't think that we are the constituency that they're aiming for. Traditional football fans, people who know about European football and all the rest of it, they think that if they can survive a storm like this, I'm sure Agnelli and these clubs believe that in Africa, in Asia, in the Indian subcontinent, all around the world, there are loads of people, particularly young people, who don't give a monkeys about what happens in the Portuguese league, who've never heard of Newcastle United, just to use an example, and who really do want to see Barcelona playing Manchester City or whoever every week. I think the statement that the breakaway is aimed at those rather than us traditional football fans.
I think that's part of it, Danny, and I think it would be daft to have this conversation and suggest that because football Twitter is against it, that the world is against it. And I think that's what we have to understand here, that this isn't a move necessarily that's about sport. It's about entertainment and it's about making money. And that's something that, interestingly, when we go back to the pandemic, which has definitely speeded this conversation up, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And the financial pressures on even the biggest clubs in the world has speeded this up, certainly to a prospective endpoint. It's interesting when there was this discussion between clubs in Germany, and when Mark talked about German clubs maybe looking at it from a distance and deciding what to do, having a bit of a voyeuristic approach and stepping back. I think that part of that is that they know, Bayern and Dortmund and other clubs that might be involved, that the public reaction from a strong and united fan culture in Germany would be one of the most vehement in all of the biggest European football supporting leagues. But there was this conversation last year when people looked at how German football would move on from the pandemic, how they would find a better model of football going forward. And I think it was the president of Augsburg said, look, we have to decide whether we're in the sport business or the entertainment business. And I think you only really bring up that question when you know what a lot of people's answer to that is already.
Yeah, listen, we'll take a little break in a second and we'll come back and talk about what it is they were actually proposing or are actually still working away in the background. And we'll talk about the way football has changed and does change. I mean, obviously, I've lived through an amazing amount of changes, and I think, you know, the argument that UEFA were putting out in their statement about sporting values, as long since that boat has sailed. Most of the major changes in the last 30 years have been about money and power, and we'll talk about that. We've got a couple of polls for you on this. Even though they haven't come out and blatantly said it, it's obviously in the wind. So here's the two questions for you. You can go to Twitter and vote in our polls. Would you stop supporting your team if they join this Super League, as Gary Neville was suggesting people should do when he was on Sky TV earlier today? Would you stop supporting your team if they joined the Super League? And secondly, I want you to be honest here. And it says honestly in the poll, would you watch the European Super League? You'll be charged for it, but get that. Then you're charged for most football you watch. Would you watch the European Super League. This is Trans-Europe Express on talkSPORT with Live Score. Download the app today for live scores, goal alerts, lineups, match stats, and more from all of your favourite leagues.